All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Mem Vav 46. We are picking up on 45b, and we left off, not to do today, we left off at the wide lines. So also, if you remember again, we left off with the fascinating halacha that two can compel one cannot compel two, right? The halacha being that if you have three people eating a meal together, one of them wants to bench and move on, he cannot compel the other two to bench. I will say, if you remember, and also I think we saw a very important halacha regarding mezumin, right? That mezumin is not just simply like, whipped cream on the top of the cake, right? But rather it's a halachic obligation, which means that halacha l'maisa, as the Shulchan Aruch said, once three people sit down and have a meal together, they generate a halachic obligation for zimun. One has to go, he's got to wait for the other two. He cannot break up the group. Two, however, can compel one ultimately to go ahead and halacha l'maisa begin the zimun now. Now the truth is, we'll see actually, Michael, Dr. Langbaum asked me after the shares today, where does the one, in that case, where does the one pick up from benching from, right? What happens if you're the silent one? You want to continue your meal, right? So you want to go ahead and you're stopping for the other two, they're going to bench. Where does the one pick up from? We're going to see at Simachlokis in the Gemara today, we'll discuss that. Shabbos says, so again, however, we did see that ultimately, again, if two want to stop for one, they certainly have the ability to do so. In other words, if you want to be nice, like we saw in the Gemara before, Rav Papa stopped for his son, even though there was no obligation to do so. So we're continuing in this topic. Yehuda bar Mereimar, or Mar bar Avashi, Rav Achami Difti, Karchi Rifti behadi hadodi. So listen to this. This is fascinating. So Yehuda bar Mereimar, Mar bar Avashi, Rav Achami Difti, all broke bread together. Lo havabahu chad dahava muflog mechavri lebruchi lehu. So they assumed that who leads benching? The greatest person in the group, right? However you define greatest, the greatest scholar, the most pious, whatever it is, the greatest person in the group should lead benching. The issue with this group was they all consider themselves like peers, and no one was greater than the other. So what happened? So they thought to themselves, Yosef v'kami bailu, hadisnan shlosha sha'achlu ka'achas chayav v'lezamin, hanimili heicha dika adam godel. So they came up with the conclusion that when do we say that if three people bench together, that ultimately they form a mezumin, that's when one is greater than the other two and could lead them. So they both say the idea of a mezumin is a cohesive group where the collective bracha somehow is greater than individual brachos. So they understood this halacha to mean that that's true when one person is greater than the other two. Therefore he leads them, which I both say you can understand why they had that thought. Because remember again, the two psukim that we quoted ultimately again for what? For Zimun were from where? Moshe Rabbeinu and David HaMelech. And both times Moshe Rabbeinu and David HaMelech were calling out to other people to join them. So you could understand why the paradigmatic example of Zimun is where you have one great person who goes ahead and leads two. So the Gemara says, so what happened? So Baruch inish lenafshe. So therefore, as a result, they each benched to themselves. So afterwards, they came to Mereimar, to their Rebbe. Amrluhu. So they told Mereimar what happened, and he said to them, Yedei bracha yitzasem, Yedei zimun lo yitzasem. You fulfilled the obligation of benching, but you have not fulfilled the obligation of zimun, of a mezumin. I so maybe you'll say, let's go back, we'll do a zimun. To which the Gemara says, which Mereimar said, Ein zimun lemafreya. Ultimately, and there's no such thing as a retroactive zimun. Once you missed it, you missed it. And Rabbi say this indeed is the halacha that even if all three individuals ultimately again are on the same level, halacha l'maisa. Even if all three individuals are on the same level, so halacha l'maisa, one leads the group and goes ahead and benches on behalf of the collective. That is indeed the halacha. I've neglected to mention the sponsors. We thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Shvat, Ed and Faith Wolf, for dedicating all of the Shurim and Drushos this month in memory of Faith's mother, Nessa Bas Velvel. Berachos Strimber for dedicating the Shurim and Drushos this month in memory of her husband, Avi Avram Ben Kalman Eli Ezra Levi. We hope that of the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshama Slav and Aliyah, and the families in Nechama. Shabbos say the Gemara goes weiter. Ba'u matzan kishem mevarchin. Ma'u omrechem. Another fasting halacha. What happens if you come in the middle of a zimun? Now, both say, now what this is talking about over here is people are having a mezumin. You didn't eat with them. but they have their zimun group. And halacha lamaisa, you come while they're benching mezuman. So I will say, so the shaila is, what do you answer? Right? So again, I didn't eat with them. I just happened to be sitting down at the table as they're doing their mezuman. So what is my response to a mezuman if I am a non-meal participant? So says the Gemara, here we go. So Rav Zvid Amar Baruch U'Mevorach. Rav Zvid says you answer Baruch U'Mevorach. Rav Papa Omer Ona Amen. Papa says you say Amen. And the Gemara says, V'lo pligi, they're actually not arguing. Had ashkechinu de ka'amri nevarich. Had ashkechinu de ka'amri baruch. So watch this. Ashkechinu de ka'amri nevarich. Omer baruch u'mevorach. Ashkechinu de ka'amri baruch. One amen. Suppose to take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, B'hav de ka'amri baruch u'mevorach. Ki de ashkechinu de ka'amri hamazame nevarich. Aval ashkechinu da'anu baruchu one basrayu amen. Shabbos say, what this sounds like is as follows: that if you come in and you hear the mizamein say Rabosai nevarich, so you answer baruch u'mevorach. Baruch u'mevorach. If, however, if you come at the end, baruch shachal mishlov tavo chayinu, ultimately again you answer amen. And in fact, interestingly enough, this halacha is codified in the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches. So the Shulchan Aruch writes, let me just read this to you. Shulchan Aruch writes, Kuf Tzadichas. Listen to this. Shlosha sha'achlu. This is Kuf Tzadichas Sif Aleph. Shlosha sha'achlu vehin mevarchi v'nichnas echa shelo achal. So we'll say, so this happens all the time, right? Three people are eating. You walk in, you didn't eat with them. What happens? Im nichnas kishomer ha'mevarich nivarich shachal mishalo. So one acharav baruch u'mevorach shmo tamid li olam vayed. So the Shulchan Aruch actually has a little bit of a longer nusach. Thank you. So ultimately, yeah, so in this case, the mevarich said Rabosai nevarich, and everyone answered Baruch Shachan. Right? And then again, when the Mevarich says, Nevarich Shachal Mishalo, so the one who joins in says, Baruch u'mevarach shemo tamid li olam va'ed. And if you come at the end of the Zimun, Baruch Shachal Mishalo Tavo Chayinu, you simply answer Amen. That's the halacha as codified in the Shulchan Aruch. So the Gemara goes weiter. Next, Tani Chada, Ha'one Amen Achar Berachos Hareizim Meshubach. We'll say this is just another side halacha, which is also quite fascinating. If a person answers Amen after his own brachas, Hareizim Meshubach. The Gemara says this is a good thing. V'tani Yidach Hareizim Aguna. Yet another Gemara says, another Brisa says, it's disgusting. Lo kasha, it's not a contradiction. Habe Boni Yerushalayim, Habe Shar Brachas. Both said different brachas have different halachas. Sometimes you answer Amen, for example, after Bonei Yerushalayim. That's where it's meshubach, that's where it's good. And after other brachos is where you should not do it. What's the distinction, Rabbi Osai? So if you take a look at Rashi, Rashi says over here, Habe Bonei Yerushalayim, Shehi Sof HaBrachas. Harei meshubach. Rabbi Osai, the halacha is any time that you are at the end of a unit, there is at times, although we don't do it all the time, but whenever you are at the end of a unit, it is appropriate to go ahead and recite Amen. Amen signifies the closing, the end of a particular bracha unit. So for example, as we're going to see, Bonei Yerushalayim is the end of biblical benching. Anything after that, Hatov HaMeitiv, is rabbinic. So therefore, again, the concept is Bonei Baracham Yerushalayim, Amen. We answer Amen to our own bracha over there, but it's not really answering an Amen to the bracha. That Amen ultimately, again, is the closing of a unit. Rashi gives other examples over here. Rashi happens to say, V'chein b'sof berchas kriya shma, shachris v'arvis, v'achar kol berchos of the K'nei Raisa. So again, we'll see where this Rashi comes up in a little bit. But Lamaisa, again, the Gemara makes a distinction. You could say Amen at the end of a unit, but you don't say Amen after stam a bracha. So the Gemara says, Abaye ani lebakala, kiechi delishmu. Good. Abaye ani lebakala, kiechi delishmu paul and v'leikumu dat. Tov ameitiv lav daraisa. Abaye would answer the Amen after Uvenei Yerushalayim very loud, in order that what? The workers should hear and get back to work. But remember again, we already saw this concept. that workers in general daven a truncated form of tefillah and a truncated form of Berachos Hamazon. Apparently, Abaye felt that workers don't say Atov HaMeitiv. They only bench up to Uvenei Yerushalayim, and at that point in time, get back to work. So therefore, he would answer the Amen after Uvenei Yerushalayim very loud, so that the workers would see that as a signal to go back to work. Rav Ashi ani lebelechisha ki'ech idlo nezazlu ba'Atov HaMeitiv. Rav Ashi would go ahead and answer it a little bit quieter, in order that what? In order that people should not be mezalzel, that people should not chas v'shalom denigrate hatov ha'meitiv. In other words, on one hand, you have to make it clear, as we're going to see, that hatov ha'meitiv is not biblical, that it is only rabbinic. Yet at the same time, you don't want to come to a situation where halacha l'maisa, people begin to denigrate hatov ha'meitiv. Top of Memvav, Rav Zera Chalish. Rav Zera became sick. Ola Gabi Rabbi Avo. This is most beautiful Gemara. Rabbi Avo came to visit him. Kabil alay, and he made the following nether. He said, I mitbach katina charich. I mitbach katina charich saki. Avidna yamatav l'rabanan. If the short man with singed thighs is healed, I will make a yomtiv for the rabbanan. So both say. So says the Gemara. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Katina charich saki. Why was Rabbi Zera called the short man with singed thighs? So Rashi says over here, "Kachayu korn Rabbi Zera." The time of mafarish bam metzia b'sochas halam. So the Gemara bam metzia explains. We saw this obviously the last cycle. But Rabbi Zera would go ahead and sit in a heated oven chamber once every 30 days to make sure that he was free from sin. So what does that mean? If the fires would not harm him, he knew that the fires of Gehenna had no reach on him. He knew that he was sin-free. That's how he tested his own. It was his own spiritual litmus test. So one time there happened to be that, for whatever the reason, the Gemara discusses, so he got singed in the oven. So they called him the short man with singed thighs. He was short, and they called him the singed thighs because of this Maisa. So Rabbi Zera was ill. Rabbi Avo came in to visit him, and Avo said, listen to how beautiful this Gemara is. Rabbi Avo made a neder. He made a Kabbalah. He said, if Rabbi Zera gets better, I will make a yomtiv. I'll make a beautiful su'udah for the rabbis. So I'll say, first of all, such a beautiful Gemara also, that in general, when we see someone in need, so of course tefillah is always incredibly important, but Kabbalahs, taking something upon yourself, something upon yourself for the schus of the other, is an incredible inyan. Se'it Bach Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Zera was healed. Avid Su'udasa l'kul Rabbanon. So Rabbi Avo made good on his promise. He made a Suda for the Rabbanon. Kimata l'mishrei, when it came ultimately, and a mishrei in this context means hamotzi. Rashi says, Kimat l'mishrei lishna d'sherusa kilomar lifros birchas hamotzi v'lechol. When it came time to make hamotzi, so what happened? Amar le Rabbi Zera lishri lanmar. So let's remember again. So just you keep in track the names. Rabbi Avo is the host, right? He's the one who made the neder. Sorry, Rabbi Zera was ill. Right, Rabbi Avo makes the neder. If my friend Rabbi Zera gets better, I will make a su'udah for him. So Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Zera heals. They're sitting at this su'udah. They're about to make hamotzi. Rabbi Avo wants to be mechabed Rabbi Zera with the hamotzi. Amar le Rabbi Zera l'shlemar. Amar le lo savar lamar lahad Rabbi Yochanan da Amar bala bayis potseya. So Rabbi Zera said to Rabbi Avo, you know the halacha is that the balabayis is the one ultimately who goes ahead and makes hamotzi. Right? Again, that's not, we'll see why that is, but ultimately, again, that's not something that halacha l'maisa you are mechabed someone else with. Rather, again, that's something that balabayis himself does. So sharilu. So therefore, again, Rabbi Avo makes hamotzi. Good. Kimata lebruchi. When it came time then to go ahead and lead benching, kimata lebruchi. Amar le nevarich lan mar. So once again, Rabbi Avo, who is the host, turns to Rabbi Zera, who is the guest of honor, and says, "Please, will you lead us in benching?" Amar le lo savar lamar lahad Rav Huna dimin Bavel. Don't you hold of the opinion of Rav Huna of Bavel, da Amar botseya mevarich, who says that the one who benches, that the one who makes hamotzi is the one ultimately, again, who should go ahead and bench as well. Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Rav Huna mi Bavel, Hain Rav Huna stamos. First of all, Rashi just points out Rav Huna of Bavel is Rav Huna, same person. Fine. So the Gemara says, so we'll say ultimately again. So who did he hold? Like we'll say, here you have Rabbi Avo tries to be mechabed Rabbi Zera twice, right? Once with Berachos Hamazon, once with Hamotzi, and the second time with Berachos Hamazon. So it says the Gemara, V'iyu kiman sviralei. So who did he hold like? Ki had amra b'yochram b'shon ben Yochai, balabayis botzea va'oreach mevarech. So we'll say that ultimately again. Now, what's interesting to note over here is Rabbi Avo apparently also knew that the halacha was that the balabayis makes hamotzi. And we'll see why this is. The balabayis is always the one who makes hamotzi, but ultimately, again, there is a concept of giving the guest to lead benching. Why is it that the balabayis makes? This halacha l'maisa balabayis botzea. Why is it that the balabayis makes hamotzi? Kadeshi vatze ba'ayin yafer. Both is fascinating halacha. So again, we'll talk about, like for example, kiddush, being mechabit someone else with kiddush. But one thing is clear, which is the halacha says the balabas always makes hamotzi. And the reason for that, Rabbi say, is that there's a concept ultimately, again, when cutting and giving out the challah or the bread, it's not just Shabbos. This is any time one is making hamotzi for a group, to be generous with the challah, or with the bread. The concern is, right, I'll say, sometimes it's awkward to be generous with someone else's stuff. I should say, actually, a lot of people are very comfortable being generous with other people's stuff. And I'll say, but sometimes, if you're cutting someone else's loaf, so you're not going to feel comfortable cutting a gezunta piece and giving it out because it's not your bread. So therefore, there's a concern if someone other than the balabayis is making hamotzi, then again, he's not going to be generous ultimately again with the prusa, with the piece. So therefore, the halacha says, it's codified in Shulchan Aruch, the halacha says the balabayis is always the one who makes hamotzi. What about the oreach mevarich? Listen to this, oreach mevarich. But yet, it's good to have one of your guests bench, kedei shevarich balabayis, in order that the person who benches will recite what we call the birchas balabayis, or what's also known as birchas oreach. There is a hiratzon in benching that ultimately the person who benches makes on behalf of his host. So if the balabayis benches, he cannot make that bracha on behalf of himself. But if the guest benches, the guest has the ability to make that bracha on his behalf. Mai mevarich, ask the Gemara, what is this bracha? This is so beautiful. Mai mevarich, iratzon shelo yevosh balabayis ba'olam hazeh, v'lo yikalim li olam haba. Kadosh Baruch Hu, which should be your will, that this balabayis, right, my host, should not be embarrassed in this world, nor shall he be ashamed in the world to come. So I'll say that was apparently at some point in time, that was the entirety of the bracha. Rebbe Mosif Dvarim. Rebbe added on additional pieces. V'yitzlach ma'od b'chol nechasav. He should be very successful in all of his properties. V'yu nechasav u'nechasenu mutzlachim. And let his properties and our properties, or really the properties, possessions, let all of our possessions ultimately be matzliach, be successful. Ukrovim la'ir, and let us have possessions that are close to the city. Rashi says over here, what is close to the city? Krovim la'ir. Sheyuchal lir'osan balabayis tamid v'la'das mahin tzrichin. That you should be able to keep an eye on your properties, so you should know what's going on your properties, and therefore, again, if anything goes wrong, you should be able to fix it. V'al yishlot satan lo b'ma'aseh yadav v'lo b'ma'aseh yadenu. And the Satan should not have any hold on his actions or on his dealings or on our dealings. Va'ayizdaker lo lefanav v'lo lefanenu shum davar hirhur chet v'avera v'avon me'atavi adolam. And there should not appear, not before the balabayas, not before us, any type of hirhur chet, desire for sin, desire for avera, iniquity. Remember again, chet, avera, and avon represent different levels of severity of sin. Me'ata v'ad olam, from now and forever. So we'll say this is the birchas oreach or birchas balabayis that literally again we have as part of benching with slight variation to this very day. We'll say it was. I don't know why I never noticed this before so much, but it was quite striking to notice that the beginning of this beracha is this notion that Yiratzon shelo yevosh balabayis ba'olam hazeh, like that the first bracha you give to the balabayis is he shouldn't be embarrassed. It's interesting, right? Because again, remember, in the context of a meal associated with parnasa, the rest of it I understand, right? Daven for his parnasa to be successful, also daven ultimately again for his spirituality, that his material success should not come at the expense of his spiritual success. But the notion of embarrassment, the notion of humiliation, it goes back a little bit to Shabbos' daf. If you remember again in Shabbos' daf where we learned that mutav la'adam shiapilas atzmo l'soch kivshan ishi yalbim p'nei chavero b'rabim. Better to go ahead and cast yourself into a fiery furnace than to embarrass your friend in public. And remember again, right? This is Shabbos. We had this. Shabbos, yeah. Right. And Rabbeinu Yonah, who explained so dramatically, the Rabbeinu Yonah codified this halacha l'maisa. That is actually Rabbeinu Yonah says one of the Yarig Val Yavars. Right. It's one of the three. It's part of Shichas Damim. It's part of murder. That's how the Rabbeinu Yonah actually paskins halacha l'maisa. So you see this notion of embarrassment and losing one's dignity and losing one's kavod is such a big thing that this is the first thing we daven for the Baal Bayis. And it hopefully sensitizes us to how we deal with each other. Because a lot of times, whether it's meant in a good-natured, jocular fashion, we make jokes, we poke fun, and we have to realize how careful we must be with the kavod and the dignity of the other. That an offhand comment that might sound a little bit funny or sarcastic or a little bit snarky to us, it might not seem like a big deal, could mamish humiliate someone else. You see again, the oreach, the first thing he davens for is that the Baal Bayis shouldn't be embarrassed. Incredible. Excuse me. We'll see now an interesting shaila. When we talk about benching b'mezuman, how far does the mezuman bracha go? In other words, what's included in the mezuman bracha? Rav Nachman Amar ad nevarich. Rav Nachman says it's really just that beginning part. The Rabbos say nevarich, those extra supplemental lines, up until the beginning of formal benching. That's it. Rav Sheshes Amar ad hazan. This is very interesting. Rav Sheshes says that mezuman goes through the first bracha of benching. Rabbos say, understand what this means according to Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says that ultimately, again, zimun goes through the first bracha of benching. What does that mean? That if you don't have a mezuman, then what? Then what? According to Rav Sheshes, you do not recite the first bracha of benching. According to Rav Sheshes, without a mezuman, you begin from no delacha. The second paragraph in benching is very dramatic. So the Gemara says, so true, this is a machlokes tanoim. The Tani Chada Berachos Hamazon Shnayim Ushlosha. One opinion said, or I should say, one brisa said that sometimes benching is 2 paragraphs, sometimes it's 3 paragraphs. So I should say 2 brachas, 3 brachas. But Tanya Idach, another brisa said, Shlosha va'arba. Sometimes benching is 3 brachas, sometimes it's 4 brachas. So says the Gemara, let's analyze. Savru adechuli amatav ametiv lav daraisa. So we'll say, let's take it for granted that Tova Meitiv is not included in this discussion, right? Because Tova Meitiv is going to be Dirabanon. And therefore, halacha l'maisa not included in this. So the Gemara says, so if that's the case, why does one brisa say sometimes benching is 2 or 3 brachos, sometimes benching is 3 or 4 brachos? My love b'hakamif. Yeah, they're not arguing about the following point. Here we go. Man damer shtayim u'shalosh kasaver ad hazon. So we'll say, so the one who says that sometimes benching is 2 brachos, sometimes it's 3 brachos, he holds that what? That zimun really includes what? The first bracha of benching as well. It's the Rabbos sign of Varech, through the end of the bracha of Hazon es Hakol. So if you have a mezumin, then benching will be 3 brachos. If you don't have a mezumin, then what? Benching is only 2 brachos. Uman da'amar shalosh va'arba, but the opinion who holds that benching is sometimes 3 or 4 brachos, kasavra ad nevarich. He holds that what? That lemaisa, again, zimun is only the first supplemental prefix, the Rabbos say nevarich. So sometimes benching is 4. 4 would include the first 3 brachos of benching plus the prefix of the zimun. Sometimes it's 3 just without the zimun. To which the Gemara says, lo. Rav Nachman mitaris l'tamei, but Rav Sheshes mitaris l'tamei. No, both say both Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes understand, feel that their shitos could align with both of these braisos. How so? Rav Nachman mitaris l'tamei. So Rav Nachman explains. So remember again, both say Rav Nachman is the one who said that zimun is only the opening supplemental lines. That I both say nevarich lines. That's it. So Rav Nachman mitaris l'tamei. D'chuli amma, first wide line mem vav amud aleph. D'chuli amma ad nevarich. Everyone agrees that zimun is only the opening supplemental lines of Rabbos say nevarich until Nevarich shachal mishol tevo chayinu. That's it. Man damer shalosh va'arba shapid. So the opinion. So the brisa that says sometimes benching is 3, sometimes benching is 4 makes sense. When is benching 3? When is benching 3? Ultimately, again, where you don't have a mezuman, hazon asakol ala aretz yala mazon and bonei barachama b'Yerushalayim amen. That's it. Those are 3 brachos. When you have a mezuman, it's 4. Ayuman do amar shtayim v'shalosh. What about the brisa that says sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3? That price is not talking about a regular benching situation. That's talking about people who are benching on the job. Damar poseach bahazon v'kolel bonei Yerushalayim beberkas haaretz. Rabbi said, listen to this. So apparently there was a truncated form of berachos hamazon for workers. We actually saw this before. That what would happen? They would combine, they would say the first bracha of hazon hasakol, and then ultimately again they would combine the second 2 brachos of ala aretz yala mazon and bonei Yerushalayim into one paragraph. So when it says sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3, if you're not on the job, it's 3, right, without a mezumin. And if you're on the job, it's 2. And remember again, I'll say, workers don't bench b'mezumin. That we already established beforehand. Rav Sheshes is the Tamei. So Rav Sheshes, who holds that the bracha of Zimun goes through the end of the first paragraph, begins with Rabbi Osai Nevarich and goes through Hazanas Hakol. He also explains that both Braisos work with him. Tichuli Amad Hazan. Everyone agrees that what? That the Zimun bracha goes through the end of the first paragraph of benching through Hazanas Hakol. Man da Amar Shtayim v'Shalosh Shapir. So the Brisa that says sometimes benching is 2 brachas, sometimes benching is 3 brachas, makes sense. When is benching 3 brachas? According to Rav Sheshes, if you have a mezuman, right? But if you don't have a mezuman, then benching is only 2 brachos. The brachos of Ala Aretz Yala Mazon and Ubnei Yerushalayim. Uman da Amar Shalosh va'arba kasavar. But the Brisa that says sometimes benching is 3 brachos, sometimes benching is 4 brachos, he holds that what? Hatov v'hametiv da'oraisehi. Wow. That opinion holds that the bracha of Hatov v'hametiv is actually biblical, which I will say is a dramatic, revolutionary approach that we have not seen up until this point. And we will ultimately disprove it. But Lamais, again, such a position exists. Amar Rav Yosef Teida, that Hatov v'hametiv lav dorais. Rav Yosef says, but that's wrong. Please be clear that Hatov v'hametiv is not doraisa. Shari po'alim okrim osa. For the simple reason that what? Workers don't say it. So I will say again, remember, if Hatov v'hametiv was really a doraisa bracha, then workers would have to say it as well. The fact that workers automatically leave it off indicates to us that it is only D'Rabbanan. I'm Rabbi Shmuel Silber, by Martu Shei D'Rav. Teida, that Hatov v'hametiv lav doraisa. Another way we know that Hatov v'hametiv is not a doraisa. Shari poseach ba bebaruch ve'in chosim ba bebaruch. This is very interesting because Hatov v'hametiv begins with Baruch, right? So on and so forth. It begins with Baruch and it doesn't end with Baruch. Now I will say, now what does this mean? If Hatov v'hametiv were a biblical part of benching, you would not need to begin it with Baruch. Why not? Because it's something called a bracha smucha lechaverta. Whenever you have brachos that are next to each other, ultimately, again, there is no need to begin the second bracha with Baruch, because it kind of piggybacks after the Baruch of the previous one, like we have by Berachos Kriya Shema, right? Avarabba doesn't begin, which is just even Yotzai Ma'oros doesn't begin with bracha, because it's considered to be smucha lechaverta to the brachos of Baruchu. So the fact that Hatov v'hametiv begins with its own new Baruch indicates to us what? That it is its own separate independent entity of benching. Whereas the first part of benching will be quote unquote daraisa, the second part of benching of Hatov v'hametiv is only d'Rabbanan. Kiddush Sanyo. Here the Gemara just quotes this price in kind of in longer form. Kala brachos kulam poseach by mebaruch v'chosei mebaruch. Generally, brachos begin with baruch, or end with baruch. Chutz mi birchas haperos, ubirchas hamitzvos, with the exception, of course, of birchas haperos, which begin with baruch, don't end with baruch. Birchas hamitzvos, which begin with baruch, don't end with baruch. Ubrachas mucha lechaverta, and a bracha that is next to another bracha. Ubracha achronis shebekriya shema, and the last brachos in kriya shema as well. Yesh ben shabosem baruch vein chosei baruch. So also here the Bryce is just going through some of the principles of brachos, which we're not going to get into now. There are some brachos that open with baruch but don't conclude with baruch. Amud Beis v'yesh mehem shechoseim b'hem bebaruch vein poseach bebaruch. And there are others that end with baruch but do not begin with baruch. So Rashi points out over here, for example, first Rashi in Amud Beis, kegon brachas mucha lechaverta shari kvar pasach bebracha rishona ubracha achronis shebekriya shema emes yatziv ve'emuna shalabi shebekriya. Fine. So in other words, v'hatov v'hametiv poseach bebaruch ve'in chosim bebaruch. Yet Hatov v'hametiv, also interestingly enough, begins with baruch, does not end with baruch, because remember again, that bracha ends with umikol tuv liolam ayi chasreinu. That's how it ends. The fact that we're not so focused on the ending of the bracha, what we're much more focused on is what? The beginning of the bracha. The notion that Hatov v'hametiv begins with a baruch teaches us that what? Michlal de bracha bifnei atzmahi. Ultimately highlights to us the fact that Hatov v'hametiv is its own independent bracha. So remember, all of this is just to disprove the opinion that was mentioned before, that there was an opinion that said that Hatov v'hametiv is doraisa. So all the Gemara is just showing is no, it's clear that Hatov v'hametiv is not doraisa, because the way Chazal went ahead and structured benching, ultimately again was for what? Was to go ahead and put Hatov v'hametiv with its own beginning baruch, to teach you that halacha l'meis Hatov v'hametiv was an add-on. Now the truth is, if you take a look at Rashi for just a moment, Rashi says, Atov ha'metiv, Delav smucha lechaverta. Also remember again, a bracha smucha lechaverta, to get technical for just a moment, means a bracha that follows on the heels of a previous bracha. So generally when that happens, is bracha number 2 can piggyback on the bracha of, can piggyback on the baruch of bracha number 1. But the concept of bracha smucha lechaverta only works if both brachos are on the same halachic status. The fact that hatov ha'metiv opens up with its own baruch indicates to us what? That it is not on the same level as the previous brachos. So the previous brachos we're assuming are quote unquote doraisa. Now you understand the question. When we say that those brachos are doraisa, it does not of course mean that the text of the brachos themselves come from the Torah, but conceptually, the notion of thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for food, the notion of thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for sustaining us, and the notion of thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the land are all biblical concepts. We will see that the bracha v'atov ha'metiv was instituted. We're actually going to see this in 2 days from now. The bracha v'atov ha'metiv was instituted as a result or in response to the episode in Beitar, the massacre in Beitar, which occurred later on in Jewish history. We'll discuss that. But again, it is rabbinic in nature. So the Gemara says, therefore, the bracha b'fnei atzmi, v'amra v'achar bar Yitzchak teida. Again, that Atov ha'metiv is incredible. That Atov ha'metiv lav d'oraisa. I'll give you another proof that Atov ha'metiv is not d'oraisa. Shari okrin osa bebeis ha'avel. We'll say this is fascinating. That ultimately, again, we do not recite Atov ha'metiv in a shiva home. The say, so just to understand what this is referring to. The halacha is that when Avelim come back from the Beis HaKvaros, from the cemetery after burial, there's something that's called the Sudas Havra, what we loosely translate as the meal of consolation. So there's a number of halachos concerning that meal, right? It can't be the Avel's food, it must be communal food. The halacha is they don't bench b'mezuman. Interestingly enough, they don't bench b'mezuman. The halacha, you do not have a zimun. Ultimately, again, for Sudas Havra, and there are certain changes to the text of that Berachos HaMazon. But this is only for the first meal. This does not apply to the rest of the meals over the course of Shiva, only to the first meal. So the Gemara says something very interesting, that halacha l'maisa, we do not say the bracha v'atov ha'metiv in a base avel. So that means, meaning we do not say, well, we're going to see, we say an amended form of atov ha'metiv for the Sudas Havra, for that meal of consolation. Watch this. So the Gemara says, Kidisanya, Mahem Omrim Beis Ha'avel. What's the bracha that they say in a Beis Ha'avel, in a Shiva home? Baruch Hatov Ha'metiv. Okay, so I'll say, so according to the first opinion, they say Baruch Hatov Ha'metiv. Now, that's such a strange bracha to say in a Shiva home. So again, this will be part of the motif that ultimately, which we'll see later on, of Kashem Shemavarchan ala Ra, Kach Mevarchan ala Tova. The need to bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu in times of difficulty and distress, in the same way that we bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu in times of good and plenty. So the first Tanna Kama is Hatov Ha'metiv. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Baruch Dayan Ha'emes. Rabbi Akiva says we say the bracha of Dayan Ha'emes. So we'll say, so according to Rabbi Akiva, so I want to point out, everyone agrees that an Avel says Dayan Ha'emes. So the truth is, there's a machlokis in halacha as to when an Avel says Dayan Ha'emes. The way we do it contemporarily is the Avel says Dayan Ha'emes during Kriya. Right? At the time of Kriya is when he makes the bracha. Technically speaking, you could already make that bracha earlier on, even immediately after the person passes, the loved one passes away. Rabbi Akiva is indicating that there's another Dayan HaEmes that is made as part of benching. Hatov ha'meitivin Dayan Emes lo. So we'll say, does the Tanna Kama mean that you just say, so remember here's what the machlokes sounds like. The Avel is benching, Sudas Havra. The Tanna Kama says, he says Hatov ha'meitiv. Rabbi Akiva says Dayan HaEmes. So is the Tanna Kama saying just Hatov ha'meitiv, just a regular benching? So Hatov ha'meitivin Dayan HaEmes lo? No. Ella Ema af Hatov v'ha'meitiv. Rather, again, what the Tanna Kama says is, yes, he says Dayan Ha'emes, but he also says what? He also says Hatov v'ha'meitiv. So we'll say, so how does this exactly look? Here we go. Marzutra, Ikla be Ravashi. Marzutra went to the house of Ravashi, and Isra be Milsa. Nebuch, something happened to Ravashi. Ravashi suffered some type of loss. That goes to Tziyunim, it changes this, he modifies this gear, so he says, Isra Milsa bebrei, that apparently Rav Ashi's son passed away. Rav Ashi lost a child. Pasach u'baruch, so we'll say, so apparently again, he opened up, he made the bracha, Hatov v'ha'meitiv, Hashem is good and bestows good, Kel emes, truthful God, Dayon emes, Shofet b'tzedek, he judges righteously. Lokeach b'mishpat, he takes with justice. V'shalit ba'olamo la'asos bo kirtzono, and he rules over his world to do in accordance with his will. Ki kol derachav mishpat, all of his ways are mishpat. Shakol shalom, everything belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'anachnu ama, we are his nation. V'avadav, and his servants. U'bechol anachnu chayavim lahodos lo ulavarcho, and we are obligated to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all the circumstances which befall us and to bless him. Go there, pirtzos b'Yisrael. He is the one who goes ahead and fills in the gaps, right, or the breaches in Am Yisrael, or I should say, go there, pirtzos b'Yisrael. He who fills in the pirtzos, the gaps in Klal Yisrael, who yigder es pirtza hazos b'Yisrael l'chaim. May he fill in this breach within Klal Yisrael for life. You're both say quite beautiful. You should know. So this is pretty much the modified Atov Hamitiv that is codified in Yeridea. So again, contemporarily, it's a little bit different what we have today, but Lamais, again, that is how we paskin. For the first, this is only by the first Suda, just by the Sudas Havra. So remember again, not by the rest of Shiva, but just by the first Sudas Havra, we recite this modified Hatov Hamitiv as part of Birkas Hamazon. Quite dramatic. And I will say that the verbiage itself is so striking. Right? This idea of what it means to be able to bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu even in the midst of loss and even in the midst of sadness, to be able to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I thank you for everything you do for me, for the challenging things and for the wonderful things. And with the recognition, the amunah, the hope that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu will heal, he'll mend all broken hearts. There are so many pirtzos, right? So many breaches in the fence of Am Yisrael, yet we believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to fill them all in. So we'll say, so now we switch gears. Lehechanu choser. So we'll say, so remember again, I'm sorry, let's go back for just a moment. So remember again, it's a little bit, so we know how he paskin with the previous machlokes, right? Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes. Ultimately, again, where does Zimun extend to? So remember again, Rav Nachman said, Zimun really is just the opening supplemental phrases of Rabbi Osai Nevarech. Rav Sheshes, the truth is, they definitely said, Rabbi Samir Velen Benshin. I mean, there's no Shiloh. That's what they were saying. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu said. So it's not a Shiloh. So, right. So understand. So Rav Nachman is saying it's the opening phrases. Rav Shesha says it goes all the way to Hazon Sakol. So we'll say. So we know how we paskin. We paskin that it's the opening phrases. It's the opening phrases. But I will say we also know that we have a little bit of a modified approach. What's the modified approach? We saw already in yesterday's daf. What's the halacha? Going back, remember again the case of the three guys who are sitting together and eating. Two of them want a bench. One of them doesn't want a bench. What's the halacha? The one must defer to the two. So remember again, we spoke about what happens there. We saw this in the Shulchan Aruch. What happens there? So the one stops eating, puts down his sandwich, listens to Rabbi Osai Nevarech, and what does he listen through? Where does he listen through? Through the end of the first bracha. Okay, so that we're all agreed. So now the Gemara says, okay, so now we'll say Reuven, Shimon, and Levi are eating together. Reuven and Shimon went to the bench. Levi had to stop, so he put down his sandwich. He listened to benching. He was quiet and listened through Azanas HaKol. Now Levi finishes his lunch. He wants to bench. So what's the shayla? Where does Levi go back to? Right? So where does Levi begin his benching? Lehechan hu chozer. So we'll say, watch this. Fundamental machlokes. Look at Rashi. Lehechan hu chozer. Mishen itztaref lezimun va'amran le'el alibid Rav Sheshes birchas zimun ad hazan v'utrach zel lios mafsek achilas ad shigmar mevarich birchas hazan v'chazer zeh shifsek l'shtayim v'gamers v'das lehechanu chozer. So watch this. So Rav Zvid Mishnei Abaye Amar chozer l'rosh. Rav Zvid says to Abaye, go back to the beginning. He benches from the beginning. What's the shayla? Rabbanan Amri lemakom shepasak. The Rabbanan say that what? That halacha l'maisa, he goes back ultimately lemakom shepasak. Rashi says lebirchas haaretz kishar yochid. Ultimately, again, the Rabbanan say he starts at no delacha. Why does he start at no delacha? Because technically speaking, he got the first bracha through the zimun. And the Gemara says, the hilchasa lemakom shepasak. I will say, what's the halacha? The halacha is ultimately, the way the Gemara says the halacha is, lemakom shepasak, that he only has to begin at no delacha. That he was yotzei the first bracha with the zimun, and he only has to go back ultimately again to begin at no delacha. So I'll say, so the Shulchan Aruch discusses this in Siman Reish Sif Beis very, very quickly. So the Shulchan Aruch writes as follows: Eino tzarich lahafsik ela ad shiyom baruch find the gomer sudasa below bracha betchila. So I'll say, so interestingly enough, the Mechaber actually records an opinion like this, that halacha l'maisa records an opinion that he only has to start at no delacha, But of course, contemporarily, that is not the practice. Shulchan Aruch records multiple opinions of this. We don't have time to go into it now. But halacha l'maaseh, even though the Gemara seems to end off over here by saying l'makom shepasak, that he only has to start at birchas haaretz at no delecha. In fact, we do not paskin that way. And although he was yotze with the zimun, when benching, he must start again from the beginning of benching. Beautiful. Amar Reish Galus Rav Sheshes. Afagav. So this is very interesting Gemara. So Reish Galus said to Rav Sheshes, Afagav drabanan keshishi. Even though the rabbis are very old and wise, Asun parsai b'tzarech isuda b'kimi naichu. The Persians are even better when it comes to matters of meal etiquette than the rabbis. So it's interesting with this discussion. Remember again, the Reish Galusa is the head of Babylonian Jewry. Right, so remember again. So Bavel, Paras, right, Babylon, Persia were two empires that often went back and forth. So the Reish Galusa was often exposed to Persian nobility, Babylonian nobility. So the Reish Galusa says to Rav Sheshes, the rabbis are very wise. The rabbis are very wise and old and wise. But the Persians, they really are excellent when it comes to meal etiquette. Why? What do the Persians do? Listen to this. Bizman shein shtei midos. So we'll say when there are two couches. So we'll remember again, when they're eating meals reclining on couches. Sahalocha l'maisa. So what happens? So they go ahead and when they come in for two. I'm sorry. Bizman shein shtei midos. Gadol meisa barosh. So they allow. So we'll say. So remember again, when it comes to seating, if there are two people sitting down for a meal, the person who was greater was seated first. V'sheni lo lamala himenu. And then what happened is that the greater person was seated first, but the person of, we'll call it lesser importance, was seated above the person of greater importance. So I'll say, if you can imagine this. So what this would mean is the greater person is seated first, he reclines. The other person was then seated above him. Seated above him means that he was seated I don't know what the right way to say is, on top of, right, by the head, right, by the head of the greater person. V'sheni l'mala himenu. Ubizman shem shalosh, and when there were three people to be seated for the meal, gadol meisav be'emsa, so the greatest person would be seated first. There would be now three couches. The greatest person would be seated in the middle. So what would happen? Sheni lo l'mala himenu. So ultimately, again, the person of secondary greatness would be seated at the head. Right, would have the couch at the head of the greatest person. Shlishi lo lamate menu. And the person of the least greatest person would be seated at the feet of the greatest person. Amar lei, to which Rav Sheshes said to Reish Galusa, V'chi boi eshtui b'hadei, masris tarutzi v'yasiv, u'mishtai b'hadei. Well, this doesn't work so well, because remember again, that means that if the greatest person wants to converse with the second greatest person, what's going to have to happen? He's going to have to lift himself up in order to be able to turn his head and speak with the person. So you're causing the greatest person to have to move and manipulate himself in order to speak with the second greatest person. Apparently, Persians during the meal did not communicate verbally, rather they communicated with signs. So there's no need to get up and move your body around, which will say the godless of that is that, again, if you're reclining, so remember again, speaking in general represents some level of sakana, of a choking hazard. So the Persians really did have this meal etiquette down to a science, right? So they communicated with signs, whatever it was. So therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, there was no need for the guy in the middle, right, or the guy, or the greatest person of the Suda to lift himself up. Similarly, ma'im rishonim. When it came to washing. So again, remember, the Persians were also washing. Now remember again, the Persians, they weren't doing the tefillah like we were doing the tefillah, but they were washing nevertheless for cleanliness purposes. So ma'im rishonim, me'echan maschilin. So where did the Persians begin to wash ma'im rishonim? So amalei min hagadol. They start washing from the greatest person in the Suda. So the Gemara says, Min hagadol, yeshev gadol v'yishma yadav ashenat kulon. But that's terrible. Everyone knows about it. So even Jews know this. No one wants to wash first, right? Because what happens if you're the guy who washes first, right? Suddenly, again, everybody becomes, right, all talkative, and you're sitting there. So it's not bakavadik for the first person to wash first, and then a great person to wash first, and then he sits there. No. The Persians have the right idea. What happens? The greatest person, right, the most chasha person washes first, and then what happens? Abosai, they bring him his table. Remember again, they're reclining on couches, and each person has his own table. So they bring him his table first. He doesn't wait for anyone. Right? So he washes, he sits down to eat. So where do the Persians begin my machronim from? So also remember again, they're also washing their hands before they conclude the meal. Amrle min hakatan. they begin my machronim from the katan, from the least important person. So Rabbi says, so the idea is that what's the Gemara says, v'gadol yosiv yadav mizuhamos at shenotlan kulon. So is that nice that Rabbi say again, the most chashiv person should sit there with dirty hands and he only gets the one everyone else is finished? No. Amalei lo masalchi taka mikame adimanti maya legabe. No. He keeps eating. They don't take away his table until the Mayim Achronim reaches him. So Mamish, he's not sitting there with Yadayim Mizuhamos. He continues eating until the Mayim Achronim gets to him. Amar Rav Sheshes, Ana Masnisa Yadana. So Rav Sheshes says the truth is our practice is a bit different. Our practice is based on the Bryce. So this Sanyo, Keitzad Seder Seba, what's the order of reclining? Bisman Shein Shtei Mitos. If there are two people going in for two couches, Gadol Meisarosh, we seat the greater person first. Vishini lo lamata himeno. And I will say we actually place the person of secondary greatness at the feet of the Gadol. This way, again, if the Gadol wants to converse, he doesn't have to manipulate his body. He could just simply turn his head a little bit. Bisman Shein Shalosh. Ultimately, when there are three people eating together, so the Gemara says, Gadol Mesa Berosh, the greatest person will be seated literally again at the head, or as we'll say, what we'll call the top couch. Sheni Lo, Gadol Mesa Berosh means we'll seat the greatest person first. Sheni Lo Lamala, we'll go ahead and we'll seat the person of secondary greatness at the head of the greatest person. Shlishi lo lamata himenu, the person of the third tier greatness guy will be seated at the feet of the gadol. Ma'im harishon maschil min hagadol. What's when it comes to washing first? We begin ultimately again from the greatest person in the Suda. My machronim, when it comes to my machronim, bisman shem hey. So we'll say, you know what, we'll stop over in my machronim. We'll pick up with this piece. So we'll say, I just want to end off with one important akuda. Why all of these details? I will say, you know, the most important thing in life to have is a seder. There has to be a seder to the way you live. There has to be an order to the way you live your life. There's no such thing as doing things haphazardly. I say that differently. There are plenty of people who do things haphazardly. And they're running here, they're running there, they're late for this, they're late for that. I will say, you have to live life with a seder. When there's a seder, you can be successful. Where there's an order that allows for success. Haphazardness breeds chaos. And where there is chaos, there is usually a fundamental lack of positive, cohesive, comprehensive life movement. The Gemara goes through these details. We wonder to ourselves, come on, really? I need to know who's seated first, who's seated where? Yes, because you have to have a seder in the way you eat. You have to have a seder in the way you sleep. You have to have a seder in the way you structure your day. You have to have a seder in the way you learn. You have to, everything in life must be regimented. The more regimented you are, the more seder you have, the more success you will enjoy in life. We'll stop here.